From never going home to never tell me the... Hello there, and welcome to the second part of our RPG series, where I'm going over those books that were on my bookshelf that you might have seen during our podcast. Now, this is the second part. The first part we looked at a few of the major players in the RPG game, such as Pathfinder, Shadowrun, and Call of Cthulhu. So if you want to check out that video, please do go and check that out. It will be in the description below, and then maybe come back to this one. However, you may be here to actually hear about what my favourite RPG system is. I have that right here, but you know, we're also going to talk about some other stuff, such as the various RPG projects that I've backed on Kickstarter. I might just briefly go over the RPGs that I have in PDF form as well on my laptop, because not all of them will have been on that shelf. But without further ado, let's get to it and check out the first book. Okay, so first up on the list we have Never Going Home. This is a Kickstarter that I backed a little while back, and basically it's all about a kind of H.P. Lovecraft-ish outbreak during the World War, the First World War. So the kind of idea of this, again, is a lot of black magic and things like that. Your characters can become corrupted and things like that over the course of the game. So it's kind of like the whole concept is, whilst you've got this horrific backdrop as it is in the First World War, it then has big tentacleish monster type things on top of that. It's not directly linked to the H.P. Lovecraft universe, it's just very much inspired by it. It has its own monsters and stuff like that in this one that are original. It's based on the +1 system, which is kind of similar to one of the systems that I'm going to talk about shortly. Essentially, whenever you have a skill check to make, you pick a class that you specialise in that can accomplish the task. That has a governing attribute to it. Now, your skill in the task, so the item that you picked that's going to help solve this problem, is how many dice you're going to roll. Then on top of that you have this +1 system, which is its governing skill, allows you to make little adjustments to the roll and manipulate it. So say if some of them you get to manipulate beforehand, maybe give you a temporary skill that you can then roll, or just give you extra dice to roll to try to make the check. Then there are things you can do afterwards as well. Like I said, it depends how many points you've got in the skill. So let's give you an example here. If you are making a ranged shot on something, then you would take your aimed ability at that, which is governed by guts, I think. So if you had a range skill of 2, it would mean you would be rolling 2 dice. If you had a guts rating of 2, that means on top of those 2 dice you are rolling, you could add dice to that roll for 1 point of the gut skill, and then maybe after you've rolled it, and let's say it's failed, you can then use another point of your gut skill, using up your second and last point from guts, in order to re-roll some of those dice. Successes on this game are based on rolling either a 5 or a 6. So you need those successes in order to complete a task where the difficulty is usually set by the game master beforehand. Again, it's quite an easy system. You're probably going to need handouts and things like that to actually show what the players can actually do with their points, because there's several different things that you can do with them. Generally, what attracted me to this was the setting. I thought it looked really, really cool, and there's a few extra neat little bits you actually get with it as well as getting a couple of bags of custom dice. You see, the dice are obviously used for your rolls, but the thing which is extra in this game is you also have a pack of cards. They are going to make up the journey. They're also possibly going to be where you're going to have to make checks to see whether people are going to gain corruption and things like that, because if you gain too much corruption, then your character will walk away from the party, basically. Maybe you could have them come back as a monster or something like that later because they've just gotten too corrupted. They've maybe pushed it too hard with magic, which they're not really familiar with, and they've been making sacrifices in order to actually, say, do a task. So yeah, there is magic in this game, but it always comes at a cost. The hand of cards that you have during the game, and you can use them for things like declaring initiative so that you go first and things like that. But every time you do use a card, it kind of represents your memories and your feelings and things like that, and the loss of them. So you are sacrificing a part of yourself in order to get through this struggle. There were some other cool bits that actually came from this Kickstarter, as well as like a screen. You also have a few extra books that are really neat too. But the one thing which I really wanted, which I can't seem to find right now, there it is you have your little journal as well, which is literally just blank, where you can keep some notes in, and something else, the postcards are falling out as well. The amazing art from this game too. We were actually planning on taking this with us to the UK Game Expo this year and actually running a campaign of it, but you know, with everything that's going on, that didn't happen. I've gone on way too long about this. Let's move on to the next thing. From Never Going Home to Never Tell Me the Odds. Never Tell Me the Odds is a game where every decision will be decided by a 50-50 flip of the coin. Now, it's really interesting because actually what you have in this game is, rather than stats, you have 6 items. You have a belief, you have a reputation, a resource, a possession, a physique, and a relationship. You choose one of each of those and kind of describe what it is. For a relationship, it could be something like a family member or a lover or something like that. Possessions will tend to be things more physical, like I own a gun or something like that. A resource might be a bank account. And throughout the adventure, you will be tasked with making coin flips at critical moments. Now, there is a 7th item that you can risk, and that is your life. And if you fail that twice, then the game's over. So what's the setting for this? Well, you can probably tell from the name that this is more of a sci-fi game, which is kind of in the veins of everyone's playing kind of like a Han Solo or something like that. Basically, sci-fi kind of swashbuckling type. That's the kind of characters that we'll be playing Never Tell Me the Odds. And the interesting thing about it is that there's no planning from the GM for this game, because what you'll do is you'll build the story based on what possessions and qualities the characters all choose to make their character. Now, when they make their character and they choose their attributes, you have to decide whether they are a medium, low, or a high item. In other words, how valuable they are to you. You choose 2 to be high, 2 to be a medium, and 2 to be low. And whenever the GM provides a task for them to do, they have to decide how they're going to, like, which item they're going to use, and then how difficult it is will measure up against those items. Now, the thing I don't like to tell my players when they're playing the game is their very most important item, which you have to pick at the beginning, actually gets lost straight away. It's destroyed, it's gone. That's the thing they're chasing in the story, so you build a story kind of around the most valuable items for everyone. I mean, our stories need drive, and this is a perfect way of being able to tie everyone's most important item together and giving them something to aim for, basically. Now, over the course of the game, when you're making your flips, depending on whether you chose what item you chose for what level of difficulty the current task at hand is. So, for example, if you had a medium difficulty event, you could choose to use a middle item of yours to risk. You do have to convince the GM, though, that what you're using is suitable for this. If it's medium versus medium, if you fail your flip, then the item becomes damaged and gets a mark against it. You get your second mark against it, and it's done. It's gone. You've lost it. God, dark. If you are, if you want though, you can choose to use a low risk item for a medium task, and if you do that, what you'll actually be doing is you are going to be taking a damage even if you succeed. If you fail though, that item is just gone for good and you can't use it anymore. So you can see that if you have nothing to actually risk it against, you end up having to risk your life. And like all your other items, your life has 2 hits to it. Your life though always counts as a high priority item, so you'll always have 2 chops at the bit with that one. It's a really, really neat system. It's one that's really, really quick and easy to put together. I honestly loved the game we played with this. We ended up having something ridiculous. Like they were chasing a time stopping watch that had been stolen, and they basically go to this planet that went from being kind of like a low tech planet into a massively advanced one where they were just able to stop time and then advance themselves. It had basically become a fortress. However, it had also imploded on itself, and it was actually more like a tomb by the end of it, with the guy with the watch who doesn't want it to get into the wrong hands by the end of it. That's what they're chasing, and they're basically walking into a fortress planet, basically. But they crash landed because they ended up taking damage to their ship and having to crash land somewhere. And they ended up going somewhere and reading through the phone book to try and contact the president of the planet in order to get themselves off it, get their ship repaired, and get back to the task at hand. And they ended up going through the phone book. They failed their flip. One of them tried to use their reputation for it, failed it, and so that didn't work out for them, so they decided to go for a phone book and just go through every single name, and I just had to fudge it in the end because they weren't going to stop doing it. It's one of the problems that you can sometimes get with RPGs, but anyway, never tell me the odds. This book version, I don't know whether it's actually available. I got this on a Kickstarter. You can certainly get it on a PDF in DriveThruRPG. I got it printed into the book as part of the Kickstarter campaign. I don't know whether you can definitely do that on the site. It's worth checking out though. I think it's a really, really good game. I really debated whether to talk about this one at all. It's Nibiru. Basically, I haven't had the chance really to read through this very much at all, so I really don't have a lot to really say about it at the moment. However, this is kind of like still worth doing because it's worth thumbing through these books and actually just showing you guys a few of the RPGs that were on my shelf, so I decided just to go ahead with it. The few things I do know about is this is a RPG about memory loss and regaining those memories, and about the mind and things like that, so it looks like it's not really a very combat heavy game, though I think there is combat in it. Like I said, the task for all the characters in this game is simply to regain their memories. It's got an interesting looking system where you use D4 dice and succeed on tasks on rolling 4s, and your stats basically determine how many more D4s you can roll. And really, that's all I really know about this game at the moment. I really need to read up on it more. I just really haven't had the time. But hey, I want to show you guys some of the stuff that's in this book anyway, because a lot of the artwork in this, again, like most of these RPGs, is absolutely fantastic. So that is Nibiru. Again, if you like the look of this one, I think it's quite readily available at the moment. I got this on Kickstarter, but hey. Hey Trix. How's it going? Having fun? Oh, you coming to say hello? You coming to say hello? You jumping up? You want to see what this is? Oh. Is it something different? Is it? Oh, Christ. What are you barking at, dog? Okay, now I'd like to tell you about my absolute favourite system, and I don't actually own the book for it. It's the Apocalypse engine, which is a really simple system. Essentially, your character that you create will usually only have about 4 different statistics, and you'll have a rating in each statistic which will govern how many +1s and +2s get added to your dice, how many modifiers get added to it. The system simply uses, when a roll is needed, you simply roll 2d6 and then add your modifier to it. It's an incredibly basic system, and it means you get this fast-paced storytelling that is really appealing to me. I really, really like it. But the other thing is, and the reason why I don't own the Apocalypse World book is because almost every single other book that has run off the system has its own set of rules in it. So what I need to clarify there is there is so many books available for this system, and I don't mean add-ons and things like that you need to improve your game. I'm talking about whole new games that you can get that run off this system. It's probably one of the most flexible systems I've actually ever seen. So much has come out of it. So, for example, I have been playing the Worldwide Wrestling RPG. We've actually been playing this on the Discord channel for Everybody Dice. It also comes with expansions, so some of these books even have expansions to them as well. And every single book that's associated with the Apocalypse engine has its own set of rules to it. So although it usually remains with that baseline, every character has about 4 statistics and they all have modifiers to them, they then usually make little tweaks to the system to really make it their own. In the case of the Worldwide Wrestling game, you have momentum and heat and audience. So it has this system to it where your momentum can be spent to generate heat between characters. And if you know wrestling, heat is kind of, it could represent your interactions between other characters in either a positive or negative way. Heat could be like you're really good friends and people want to see you together in the ring, whereas if you've got negative heat, people really want to see them fight, and it can turn on a dime because one could turn on the other and then the heat manages to work the other way. Heat generally then generates audience, and audience is what allows your characters to level up and take skills. One of the other things about the Apocalypse World engine is characters tend to have unique actions. I think they're called moves, where at times you can use them in order to gain an advantage, and these moves range from anything from adding extra modifiers to your dice roll to completely changing the situation. So for example, in this one, I think there's some moves where a character can have their own stipulation match and they can change a match to that once per show. That's really cool as well. These are kind of like set up in shows, so generally you're kind of encouraged to do 4 shows and then a pay-per-view or something along the lines of that. That's what's really cool about this system. There's a lot of other games out there as well that I have PDFs for on my laptop. You've got things like Monster of the Week. There's one based around action movies and things like that. And this system is fairly easy to transfer across from one to another. So in other words, if you find you like this system, there's a whole wealth of settings and things like that out there that you can quite easily pick up, learn very quickly, and start a whole new campaign with someone. Another one I wanted to show you is Blades in the Dark. This one is about thieves and your own little thieving crew. Again, it has that whole system where you have about 4 statistics, each with their own value to them. However, then you have subset skills as well in this one. I haven't had a chance to play this yet, so I'm not overly familiar with it just yet. But I do know that you also make your own gang as well. So in other words, you have your player sheet for your individual character, and then as a group of players you also have your gang, which has its own set of statistics, and also you kind of build a map around that as to how the city is laid out, where rival gangs may be that you have to take over their turf. It's still in kind of a fantasy setting, but man, this is really cool. All the different classes of gangs are really neat as well. You might have a bunch of assassins, you may just go for the straight thieving route. It's really for you to decide as a group and make your own one there. You also have a system for resolving your downtime. So when you're not with the group, you're off spending time, you're not really contributing towards a mission, you have things that can happen there. It's, again, this is one that I really want to get to the table at some point. We'll probably report back later. But like I said, there are loads of games, like I mentioned Monster in the Week and things like the action movie thing. There's tons of things that just slot very easily into this system. It's an absolute dream for designers and things like that, because it's relatively easy to be able to design your own RPG with this system and develop it and get it out there, and there's already going to be a lot of people that are going to understand the rules and be able to pick up and play it relatively quickly. Like I said, it is my absolute favourite rule set, but the thing is it doesn't end there with the Apocalypse World engine, and there's one more RPG I want to talk about, and it's a really interesting one. And the very last system that I'm going to talk to you about is Legacy: Life Among the Ruins. Now, this one was born from the Apocalypse engine. Essentially it follows a lot of the same mechanics that I've talked to you about before, but the real key feature here is before a game begins, the group gets together and describes the environment that they're dealing with. So this is a post-apocalyptic game, just to make use of the setting, but the group has to kind of decide whether it's going to be like a desert-y kind of setting. They have to set up things like possible rival gangs that are possibly within the environment, if that makes sense. There's a lot of really cool things about this game that really bring a lot of the other players together to actually try and set the scene for this one. But that's not the most interesting thing about Legacy: Life Among the Ruins. You see, you do need this book if you're going to explore what I'm about to show you, but you don't need it for all of them. But I bought it simply because I do need it for some of them, and that is because this runoff from the Apocalypse engine generated a whole bunch of books itself. So there are expansions for the expansion, or alternate settings for the alternate setting, and some of these are really cool. You have things like a generation ship, so you're going through space and you build a ship together beforehand and make kind of like this really kind of derelict ship that needs repairing before it can reach its planet. You have Worldfall, which is kind of about settling a new planet. So you describe the planet that you've settled on, and then it's your job to kind of thrive and survive there, but can also include things like political situations and things like that. So what's the political climate like? How are you going to set that up? You have Godsend, and this one looks particularly cool. The whole idea is the players are playing as two characters. So they're playing as a god, and the god is who shapes the world to begin with and actually creates it. And then you have an avatar as well, who is the person that will be sent down to the planet in order to basically decide whether this planet needs to be saved or destroyed. Your twist in this, though, is that you are not the avatar for your god, you are the avatar for another player's god. So what is really interesting about that system is it puts people into conflict. For example, their avatar may have a god that really wants to try and push the world towards destruction, whilst the god that you are actually playing wants to save the people and try and make the planet thrive. So you all of a sudden have this whole conflict, and there tends to be repercussions for avatars that go against their god. I think they can do it, but it's tricky, and it can sometimes lead to these situations where everyone in the party wants to succeed, but you're kind of having to find ways around it. I think there's a lot of things like self-sacrifice in Godsend. Haven't had a chance to get it to the table yet, but it just looks and sounds very, very cool. Again, the artwork in it is beautiful. And the last one I want to talk about is Rhapsody of Blood, because you see, a video game series that's quite close to my heart is Castlevania, and this is Castlevania in an RPG. So when you first get together, you design this castle, and the whole idea is you move through the castle in order to get to the last boss that's at the heart of the castle. And what's really cool about this game is that when you defeat the last boss, it's very possible that one player has to sacrifice themselves in order to banish them for good. And when that happens, it is possible for them to come back the next time the castle appears as the last boss themselves. So it's really cool. The whole idea is you play through generations. You have a family bloodline rather than an individual in Rhapsody of Blood. And that means that you're going to be playing through this through multiple sessions, playing as a new member of that family, going through the castle. So it's very possible that you could be playing as the grandson of one of the previous heroes that went through the castle, and that grandpa figure or grandma character, depending on which, perhaps became corrupted and they have to kill their own flesh and blood at the end of it. It sounds really interesting. Again, like I say, I haven't had a chance to play any of these yet. It's a real common theme with these RPGs. But really, this whole video has been about looking at RPGs as nice items that you can just own, even if you never get a chance to play them. I certainly have fallen into that trap, and I have all these infinitely cool books that I'm happy that I have, but I don't know whether I'm ever going to use them, and that's fine, because I know that one day there may be someone that looks at that shelf and says, oh man, that looks really cool, flicks through and says, can we play this sometime? And at that point I feel like it would become a thing where you would actually strive to do it. It's been happening with Never Going Home. We really were going to try and take that to the expo that got cancelled this year, simply because people looked at it and said, man, that looks really, really cool, can we run a game of it? But you know, one day, I know the interest is there for that one, so I know that's one that could definitely be played someday. But if you're watching this and we're still in isolation at the moment, or at least socially distancing, RPGs are a fantastic way to actually be able to pass the time. There's a program called Roll20, which, to be honest, you could just use that for rolling dice and then use something like Discord or Zoom or something like that to actually play over the web with people. It's so easy, and with people that have spare time at the moment, they have time to be able to prepare these adventures for people to try and play through. And really that's the point of this video at the moment, is trying to make you guys aware of these options that are out there and how different they all are. And if you're looking at Dungeons and Dragons and thinking, yeah, the fantasy setting isn't really for me, there's other options out there for you. There's simpler options out there for you. Just look at Never Tell Me the Odds. That is so simple to set up and play, and actually takes no planning at all. There should be something out there for everyone, is basically what I'm trying to say. But if you've missed the first video, we'll have links into the description below, so if you've watched your way through this one and want to go back and check out that one, that will be there for you. Thank you very much for watching. We can be found on social media, on Twitter at EverybodyDice and on Instagram at EverybodyDiceShow. We also have a Facebook page. You can find it facebook.com/EverybodyDice. We actually run a wrestling RPG on our Patreon Discord channel. So if you would like to possibly join that, it's so easy to make a wrestler and jump in and play. We would love to have you along. However, we offer that to our patrons for as little as $1 a month. That gets you access to the Discord, and we will message you about possibly joining the RPG if that's what you want. Apart from that, there should be some videos on screen somewhere. I really don't know where I'm going to put it on this one. If you could click those, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hopefully we'll see you guys around real soon. Let us know in the comments if there's any RPGs you're playing at the moment. Till next time, bye!